It then shifts into what we call as a corolla. So corolla already contains the yolk sac. Okay, the yolk sac is, what's the purpose of the yolk sac? It provides nourishment and nutrition to the growth of this particular being. Okay. Now after the corolla, it then develops a lot of blast cells. Okay, so meaning blast cells are big cells, and if we use the term blast, mas man siya iyang common immature siya, yes. But what is the common function of a blast cell? Yes, to divide further and also to create something as a product, right? So that's a blast. That's really just what blast is. So a group of blast cells in this case, after the corolla, will be called a blastomere. Okay? So managhan siya. Okay, so this is just a crash course. So dapat pa siya mahitap in between. So add it up na lang. Okay? So after the blastomere, primitive strike happens, and it then divides into different germ layers. How many do you know? 3. What are those? Endoderm, mesoderm, ectoderm. So we have 3. Ano man yun dito? Pero still, at least you know. Okay. So within the 3, for example, you say endoderm, mesoderm, and ectoderm. So what is the main function of the endoderm? Okay, GI tract development now. Anyone from others? What is your definition of What is the function of the endoderm? Sorry. Epithelium. Okay, epithelium. Anything else? Nothing from this, guys. Sige. I heard someone. Is that internal organs from this group. Glands. What internal organs are you thinking of when you say endoderm? Alimentary tract, yes, correct, that's correct. So it involves the intestines, it involves the liver, the gallbladder, what else? The urinary bladder, the pancreas, and so on and so forth. So that's the function of the endoderm. But before it reaches that point, no, the endoderm, after a few more weeks, it becomes a primitive gut. Okay, so it becomes your stomach and then all of the other structures before it branches out to the other organs in the body. Okay. Now, the mesoderm on the other hand, what is the usual function of the endoderm? Mesoderm rather. Connective tissue down. Anyone else? Muscles. What else? Bone. What else? Heart. What else? You've already mentioned what it means there. But yes, correct. Now, when you say mesoderm, it's responsible for 3 main types: muscles, bones, and your connective tissues. Muscles, bones, skin, and connective tissues rather. Okay, so there are when we mesoderm at later stages, they also subdivide into different types. So we have what we call as the head mesenchyme, because it's more or less the connective tissues inside in the head, and then so it's also responsible for creating the skull, and a very famous one that you can always see all the time, which is your teeth, diba? So the head mesenchyme is responsible for creating that. Next is the somites. What are somites? So, somites is the son na nasa likod. Red bubbles nasa likod. Yes, that's correct. If you understand the picture, na nasa sa likod na pit. The somites are responsible for creating the tomes, na T-O-M-E-S. What does that mean? What is tomes? So what tomes do you know? Dermatomes. You have what else? Myotomes. And you have, last one, you have Starts with letter S. Sclerotomes. Okay, somatomes. Okay. Sige, let's coin that later on after kita years masinaan nila di ba? But it's okay. So, for the three, or among the three, what is the function of the myotome? What does it do? What does it lead later on in adult life? It becomes the muscles. Yes. So it creates your muscles. Grabe. And, di ba you have myotomes? What is the clinical application of myotomes? Huh? Yes. So usually mga reflexes, no? So, di ba if you, have you had reflexes in PDR already? Not PDR. Vision lab. So have you tried doing the reflexes? Yes, those are actually your myotomes. When you try to tap into those reflexes, no, those are functions of your myotomes. It just means that it's healthy. Your muscles and the nerves that are linked together are healthy and are in good condition. Okay? So, muna siya yung gamit sa myotomes. What about dermatomes? Okay, so skin siya. Diba naman ito? C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, diba? Usually, kung dugduman na gano'n, okay, makita-kita pa ko sa octogoning sa dermatome so that I'll understand where it is. Diba? So, kung paano na, basta T4 is nipple line, and T10 is umbilical, so anything in between, so T4, so T5, T6, T7, T8, T9, T10. So T10 is siya, T10, going down, very good. Okay, yun na sa natikapikapon yung T8, tapos umuhot mo sa lupot. S2, S3, S4. Okay, so inanalip naman siya sa unang pagtutulog. So, you just have to act it out. Okay, so that's for the innervations of the dermatomes. Okay, so skin and dermatomes. And the last one is the sclerotome. So the sclerotome is responsible for your bones. It is a sclera, bones siya. So kung bones siya, meaning tanan appendicular and tanan axial bones, siya ang nahimo. Okay? Yes? Okay. So kani si sclerotome, naanan siya isa ka buo na hindi niya buhaton. Na isa ka bone na hindi niya buhaton, which is the bone of the, I just mentioned it a while ago. Isa dito, si head. Diba? Si head muscle ka, and you're responsible sa skull and sa dentin or the teeth. So meaning, kani siya, hindi siya gamit, hindi siya function sa sclerotome. Okay? Another thing that you can associate it with, pero it's not really the book. Para easy to remember is the sclerotome creates bones that are really nice. No? Femur has a structure. Humerus has a structure. Yung mga appendicular, yung rib cage has a structure, right? But if mali mo sa head, nascent ka, tanawan niyo ang skull. Diba? Frontal, parietal bone, temporal bone, prolongated ka siya, batik siya tanawan. So, bantay mo? So, basa-basa, batik siya tanawan. Hindi ka na head, nascent ka. Okay? Pero kung hindi sa tanawan, na siya structure, hindi ka na siya sa sclerotome. Okay? Soft lines. Okay? Do you get it? With me so far? Okay. So the next one is your intermediate mesoderm. So the intermediate mesoderm is responsible for creating parts of the reproductive system. So the ovaries and the testes are parts of the gonads, and the next thing is the kidneys, or specifically the nephrons. Okay? So remember that not all answers to organ kay si endoderm. Okay? Kung bumawas kanina sa inyong exam, which of the following germ layers does the kidney come from? Or the nephrons come from? Ayun ninyo automatically mention endoderm. Mesoderm si kidney. Okay? Okay? Because this came out in the last two exams na PN. So we're just making sure that you understand this. Okay? Sige. And then another one is, this one, reproductive and the kidneys. Okay? So the last portion is the splanchnic mesoderm. But actually, before siya mag-splanchnic mesoderm, mahimo siya og lateral mesoderm first. So lateral mesenchyme. And after the lateral mesenchyme, mahimo siya splanchnic. Actually, wala lang po suwat, pero lateral mesenchyme mag-ugim, contribute siya sa paghimok sa gonads. Okay, so actually nothing that specific, but the splanchnic mesoderm is the one that really creates the heart, the lungs, and the blood vessels. Okay, so both arteries and veins. Okay, you get this so far? Okay, now, I know this is very far from neuroanatomy. It's really just embryology in the at nature, at its best. But let's go to what we're here for, okay, which is the ectoderm. Okay, so we know that the ectoderm is responsible for all the nervous tissues in our body. So that non-nervous tissues, iyakagit na. Eyeballs, the nerve on your nose, the taste that you sense, no? the sabak-silok line. So, muna siya. So, ika na siya sa ectoderm. Okay? Now, sa ectoderm, it also separates or divides further into several new structures. So, we're familiar with, I'm sure you're familiar with neural crest. You're familiar with neural tube, right? Pero mas dagan ang buo, tatlo, hindi ka sabihin. Pag-yes ako doon. Yes. No, neural crest, neural tube, and then you have also a new one, which is the body of the epithelium. Do you know this? Have you heard of this? Okay. So, if you've read it in your books, the neural tube is usually divided into two, so it creates the brain and the spinal cord, right? So, di na ginani mo siya paliftan. When you see tube, tubo magod siya, sa may tubo sa inyong body na similar, you have the spinal cord, right? Spinal cord is a tube-like structure. So, di na mo malimot. So, kung na-shape tube-like structure, sa kanya sa taas, lagi siya ay umbok, right? So, mahimo siya umbok or kanang kuan ba? Bulge. So, mahimo siya brain. So, brain and spinal cord. Oh, they are new. I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay, sorry. So, just remember, when it's a neural tube, it's a tube. So, you just have to remember that the spinal cord also looks like a tube, but at the end of it, it becomes bulging. So, that's the brain. Okay? You get it? Okay, sorry if I'm speaking in vernacular. Okay, now, the brain and the, so meaning, it goes to show that when we're referring to the spinal cord, like C1, C2, C5, D1, L1, L5, S1, S2, it refers to the spinal cord and it comes from the neural tube. And when we say it comes, when we say brain, it refers to the cerebral hemisphere, the cerebellum, the brainstem, and everything in between. Okay, so that is your neural tube. Okay, now if you've seen the video that I posted in Chando, the one prior to Neurolab, there is what you call as primary, secondary, tertiary brain derivatives, and then it progresses into the adult derivative. So if you've heard of prosencephalon, rhombencephalon, telencephalon, and so on and so forth, wala na naman siya dimension din. But ika na siya sa neural tube. Okay, so, sorry na, Bisaya. So it comes from the neural tube first, and then it is then changed into those different derivatives. And then during the course of the weeks or months, then it changes until it becomes adult version. Okay, you get it? So I would include this in our lecture today. Okay, next is the neural crest. So what happens if the brain is there, the spinal cord is there, but there's no nerves? Okay, so the peripheral nerves. So the peripheral nerves is created through the neural crest. So the peripheral nerves, including your autonomic nervous system and so on and so forth. So it's created by the neural crest. The important mention here is the body of the epithelium. And the body of the epithelium is something that surrounds the entire fetus or the zygote. That is part of the ectoderm. Now, what happens with this is usually it's at the center point, no? At the center point, usually here at the chest area of the zygote. What happens is that there is what we call as a accumulation of those nerve cells. And that accumulation is known as the stomodium. Okay, so let me try to draw it for you so that this one gets me. Okay, so this is the normal zygote. This is the head here. Okay, you have how many pharyngeal arches? 6. 4. Then you have the allantoid and you have the tail. So kana siya. So meaning in this area here, no, you have what you call as the stopodium. Malapot na siya dito. Okay? Okay. Now why am I mentioning this? The body of the epithelium is in charge of creating all of the glands in the body. So sa mga glands do, glands, salivary gland, immune gland, so kung may gland sa body, sebaceous gland, basta anad gland, okay, anad gland, basta may endocrine gland, the pituitary gland, ipasok, ipubus, anyways, basta ka na siya. So tanan glands sa lawas, or all the glands in the body, are handled or created by the body of the epithelium. Now, a special mention is the stomodium. So how does it create that into a pituitary gland? So if this is the corpus callosum, you have the thalamus here, okay, with the intrathalamic addition, and then you have the hypothalamus. Okay? So, imagine this one. This is here. What is your chicken? No? Sorry. Imagine that chicken. So, in this area here, what happens is, mali siya, tiny area, then you have the pouch. So, the stomodium is located in this area. Okay? So, at 4 weeks, 4 weeks of gestation, what happens is that this area here invaginates. Okay? This area here invaginates, and then it actually takes off from the stomodium, so it becomes a vesicle. So when you say vesicle, it just means there's fluid in the middle, there's a lot of cells around it, right? So it becomes a vesicle. And in other words, it moves up. Okay? And this area here, no, is in charge of ganasya. So mga sa throat area, no, and also sa mouth area. So muna siya, salivary glands, sebaceous glands, and all of which come from there. Okay. So coming from here, usapan siya sa brain. So when it goes up, this is once again the thalamus, this is the hypothalamus. And then, so what happens with the hypothalamus is that it extends further down and creates what we call as the posterior thalamus. So the posterior thalamus, this one here, no? Posterior pituitary gland. The posterior pituitary gland is also known as the neurohypophysis. So, neurohypophysis. NHPS. Okay, so neurohypophysis, because once again, the majority of the brain is created through the neural tube. And if that's why it's called neuro, because neural tube, hypophysis, because it came from the top going to the bottom. So it's coming from the neural tube. But your anterior pituitary gland comes from the stomodium and it goes up, right? It comes from the body of the epithelium. It creates a lot of glands. So what happens during after the vesicle is it will attach to the posterior pituitary gland, and part of it will cling into the infundibular stalk. Okay. Now, also before we go, for the posterior pituitary gland, this is you have your structures. So the posterior pituitary gland has what we call as a pars nervosa, correct, and a infundibulum or pituitary stalk. So infundibulum or your pituitary stalk. Okay? So this vesicle, with further days or weeks, this will then latch into the posterior pituitary gland. So this part here, for where it latches, because if you think about it, where do I go? How do I cling into this structure? Because I have to be here. Okay, so it develops hands and it tries to claw over the infundibulum. Okay, so that's the that's the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, how many parts or semilobes does pituitary gland have? So 3. What are those? Pars. Wait, just one by one. Pars. Distalis is located in the front. Yes. Distalis. What's the other one? Pars tuberalis. Tuberalis is the one, the hands that cling into the infundibulum or infundibular stalk. And the last one is the pars intermedia. Okay? The pars intermedia is responsible for what? Melanocytes. But later on, it actually magawawala siya when you grow up. When you get to adult stage like us, wala na siya intermediate. Wala na siya intermediate. Okay, so closer na siya over later on. Okay, you get this so far. You understand how the function, the structure of how the anterior and the posterior pituitary gland meet together. It's their love life story. Yes. Okay. Now, the next thing is to understand the function of the posterior and anterior pituitary gland. How do they maintain their control? Okay, I'm sorry for the graphic drawing, but hopefully it will help. Okay, so in this case here, you know that which one do you like to talk first? The anterior or posterior? Any? Sige. You know, let's go first with the posterior. So you know that the posterior pituitary gland is created by cells of the nervous tissue. Right, so there's a lot of nerve cells. Okay, so what happens is parts of the before the lactate. What are the neuropeptides or hormones that are released by the posterior pituitary gland? Oxytocin and ADH or vasopressin. What does oxytocin do? Milk let down. What else? Uterine contractions. What else? Milk ejection. Okay. What else? Mood. Actually correct. Mood, behavior, aggression, sexual behaviors. Okay, that's the function of the oxytocin. Okay, now what happens here is just remember that the posterior pituitary gland does not create its own neuropeptides or hormones. Okay, when I say neuropeptide, those are those ADH, vasopressin that you mentioned. Okay, now what happens is that there are a lot of axons, no? Di ba you have nerve cells once again in the neurohypophysis, okay? Hindi na lagi siya sa neural tubes. Palit-palit daw ko, para di malimutan. Okay? So, a lot of the cell bodies are found in the hypothalamus. Okay? Now, these cell bodies extend their axons into the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, so what happens is that ADH and oxytocin are created in the hypothalamus and then are stored in the axon terminal located in the posterior pituitary gland. You get this so far? Yes? So once again, these are nerve bundles in your hypophysis. Okay? Next, for the anterior pituitary gland, what are the neuropeptides or hormones that are released? You have TSH, FSH, LH, ACTH, ACTH. What else? Puro H. So dagan siya. What my mnemonic is this, it's flat bread. Sorry, not flat bread. Ibutong pa. Flat peg. Flat peg. Okay. So flat is FSH, L is LH, A is ACH, T is TSH, P is proline, and G is GH. But E is there. It's a special mention of E, which are not usually found in books, in our medical books, but there are several things nasa neurology books and neurosurgery books. And there's an E, and that's endorphins. So usually the endorphins are also created in the pituitary gland. Okay? So, mana siya mnemonics. Flat peg. I don't know if you need the mnemonics, but for me, I retain naman siya kalugayan. So, contrary to the posterior pituitary gland or the neurohypophysis, the adenohypophysis or the anterior pituitary gland is responsible for creating its own neuropeptides or hormones. Why? Why is that? Because it's a different germ layer, yes, but what germ layer does it come from? It comes from the somodium in the body of the epithelium, and once again, they are responsible for creating your glands. So that's why adenohypophysis creates its own hormones or neuropeptides because it itself is already a gland. So adenohypophysis, no? Adeno just means gland. Okay, grabe kayo stress no? Adeno just means gland. The hypophysis because now just a extension sa hypothalamus. So it creates its own hormones or neuropeptides. So it doesn't need the hypothalamus to create these hormones for it. Okay? Okay. Now, example. Kalimutan ko sa mga sample. Sa matong pwede dito. Okay. You mentioned that oxytocin, certain functions of oxytocin you mentioned, milk promotes milk letdown. Right? So let's say, for example, a mom that recently just nanganak lang siya. So, recently delivered a baby. Now, you as an intern or a clerk later on would want to initiate latch on. So, meaning you want to feed the baby. You see the mom. You see the mom. Okay, so, mommy, here's your baby. I want you to feed her. Or him, rather. Okay, now, how do you do that? So, mommy, so these are the things. You just have to show your breast, and then you feed the nipples, and then you latch the baby on. Right? So the mom of the baby then gives a stimulus to the nipples because the baby will try to suck the nipples for milk that down, right? So what happens next? when the baby latches on and tries to suck in the nipples, what happens? There is send signals to the breast, huh? To the hypothalamus. So what happens is, when the baby sucks, it's initiated, sends signals to the hypothalamus via the what tract? What nasa tract? Fiber tract. Skin. It's not pain. Maybe at first pain, siguro. Pero light touch. Temperature. Sige ha, learning goals. But anyways, let's not go there because we will not talk about in the exam. Hopefully, you will not. Anyway, so latching goes into the sending tract, no, fiber tract, and afterwards it goes to the brain, to the thalamus. The thalamus then tells you, this one here, tells not you, but the brain to say, where do I give this process? I need someone to help me create milk or secrete the milk. I say, it's a function of the oxytocin. So who's in charge of oxytocin? The posterior pituitary gland. So I say, okay, the thalamus will then say, okay, let's send signals to the hypothalamus. So that hypothalamus receives that signal and then sends that signal to the posterior pituitary gland. Posterior pituitary gland reacts, he said, I have to send signals now, I have to send oxytocin. So oxytocin is then released from the storage area of the posterior pituitary gland. Hypothalamus, because of that release of that oxytocin, will then create more oxytocin for storage. You get it? Okay, so while it's releasing oxytocin in the pars nervosa, your hypothalamus is also creating more oxytocin for storage. Yes. Now, what happens is, so how does this oxytocin get into the bloodstream and into the breast tissue? Hypophyseal portal system, correct. So na siya specific na portal system that will help you distribute those neuropeptides to all of your body. Okay? You get this so far? So once oxytocin enters the hypophyseal portal system and into the circulation or systemic circulation, oxytocin is then released into the breast tissue. So breast tissue says, I released oxytocin. I'm now stimulated. So I will now produce more milk. So produce more milk. So then you're now feeding the baby. Do you get it? Okay, so then what happens next? What happens if the baby is already full and there's no more stimulus? What happens? Inhibited, no? No more stimulus. So what happens is, what happens next? Balik ka sa cycle. What's the next cycle? After there's no more stimulus in the nipple of the mother, what happens? Send signals to the hypothalamus diritso. To the fiber tracts. So ascending fiber tracts again. After ascending fiber tracts, what happens? It goes into the thalamus. Ayun na pala. Ano siya sa thalamus? After sa thalamus, it goes to the... What did you answer? So, bago pagkita ng storya. Okay, after sa hypothalamus, mga thalamus, wala na stimulus. So I should stop. We should stop the we should stop the So what happens? If we stop, then I tell hypothalamus, okay, you stop already producing, you stop letting down the oxytocin. And so the hypothalamus says, I will no longer stimulate. So it says, okay, I will stop the production of oxytocin and I will store them. So there's no more release. Right? So when there's no more release, meaning there's no more oxytocin in the body. Okay, so no more milk left. You get it? So that's how it functions. That's the reason why it's like that. But So meaning the hypothalamus is responsible for stimulating and inhibiting any type of function in the body. That's why the hypothalamus is the center of homeostasis regulation. Okay? Okay. But your pituitary gland is still the master gland. The mastermind, but the mastermind will always have someone who talks at the back. So, see, hypothalamus. You get this so far? Yes? Any questions or clarifications? None? Okay, so let's go to our structures. Okay, so we'll first discuss the housing of our pituitary gland. So this is your normal skull. Okay, this is the cranial base. So you see here the caudal view, rostral view. This is the caudal view, meaning on top. And this one here is the anterior portion. So if I look at here, this is the anterior part. This is the anterior lobe parts of the anterior zone rather. Then in the middle, you have the middle zone and you have the posterior zone. Okay, so it's divided into three. Na-discuss na before, no? Okay, so the location of the pituitary gland is where? Where is it located? In the sella turcica, correct. So the sella turcica is located in the middle of the cranial fossa, or cranial base rather. And it's in what bone? The sphenoid bone. So the sphenoid bone looks like a butterfly if you think about it from the top and even from the front. And even actually, every side you look at it, it's a butterfly. Okay, so if you can see this structure here, this is the butterfly formation. I don't make use of our camera. Okay, so if this is our anterior part, posterior part, anterior, middle, and posterior zones. Then you have the sphenoid, the sphenoid bone here. So it really looks like a butterfly from the top. Now in the middle, you see their structures. Okay, so the structure here at the very top. Okay, at the very top here is known as the tuberculum cillae. This is the sella turcica, which is then covered by the diaphragma cillae. And you have the dorsum cillae here. Okay, once again, tuberculum cillae, diaphragma cillae, sella turcica, which is covered by the diaphragma cillae. And this one is the tuberculum cillae. Dorsum cillae rather, sorry. Dorsum cillae. Now you have two projections here up front, and these are called, what are these called? Anterior clinoid process. Anterior clinoid process. And at the behind, hopefully you can see it here. Can you see this like two horns? This one and this one. So once again, this is the dorsum cillae, right? Okay. And so the two horns at the side are known as the posterior clinoid process, and the two vampire leaf-like structures are in the posterior, the anterior clinoid process. Yes, so far. So anterior clinoid process. Okay. Tuberculum cillae, sella turcica, the dorsum cillae. Get it so far? What is this called? Dorsum cillae. This one is called posterior clinoid process. This one is called anterior clinoid process. This one is called tuberculum cillae. This one here is the sella turcica, where the pituitary gland rests. Okay. Now, if you remember before, the skull caps, or what you call as the meninges, if you remember the swimming cap structure there, it's actually the same. So the swimming cap extends further down, right? You have the falx cerebri, you have the tentorium cerebelli, and the falx cerebelli. And you remember that they actually extend down here. You still remember? It extends down here. So where do they all meet? Okay? So because they extend all the way from the top to the bottom, no? To cover mo dito sa tagan, they all meet in this area in the sphenoid process. Ano mo kami? Sorry po. Okay, so they all meet at this area. Okay? So when they all meet in this area, that's the reason why your clinoid processes, the Pharmacidae and the Tentorium, and the Tuberculoceae are slightly protruded compared to the others is because these areas are where your meninges attaches. And that's the reason, because of the constant, like if you move, pagkabata, or something, move sa siya. Because the bones are, the meninges are inserted there, and the bones actually move as you grow. Okay? So, manayinanin na siya itsura. So that it stabilizes itself. Okay? Okay. So that's the reason why it looks like that. Now, the pituitary gland then, again, rests here. Okay? Now, I want you to see the rubber model. Remember this? No, not yet. You remember this? Oh, you don't have this yet. Oh wait, why the what batch ni bro? Nakailan sila? Really? Skip yet. Sige, anyways. So let me introduce you na lang. Contrary. Okay, let me introduce you to Darth Vader. Di ba ba siya Darth Vader? I don't know. Sa kuha lang. Anyways, so si Darth Vader, this is actually the brainstem. So the brainstem is the connection between your spinal cord here below and the brain above. So if you can remember our brain, this is our brain, right? So this is the frontal part of the brain, this is the lateral part of the brain, this is the top part of the brain, and this is the posterior part of the brain with the cerebellum. With the cerebellum. Okay, so this one is actually located inside. Okay, so if you take a look at this area over here, this part is the pons, and this is the medulla oblongata. And cut section is siya, so the spinal cord comes out from here. Okay? Now, this area, this one, the pons and the medulla oblongata corresponds to this in the model. This is the pons and this is the medulla oblongata. You get it? Yes. So, now, since this is the pons and the medulla oblongata, we will then go up a little bit further. Okay? This is the midbrain. Okay? So there are three parts of the brainstem. You have the medulla oblongata, you have the pons, and you have the midbrain. Okay? Medulla oblongata is located caudally, meaning ubos. And then your midbrain is located on top. Okay? You have here the pons. So notice that in this area here, you have two large egg-shaped structures. This egg-shaped structure is known as the thalamus. Okay? So if you can look at this one and compare it to my drawing, which is this one, it looks the same. It's this. It's the egg-shaped area, and you have the thalamus over there. Okay? Now, I mentioned that this is the corpus callosum, right? So the corpus callosum in this area is this one. It's just top. Okay? It's the top part. So, I think you have your specimens with you, right? So, this one here, at the top part, is the corpus callosum, and this one here is the thalamus. Okay? Now, the thalamus, so, I forgot to mention, we mentioned the neural tube, and then may mo siya brain, but before that, may mo siya prosencephalan, telencephalan, or mencephalan, and all. But after that, the secondary brain derivative after the prosencephalon is the it converts into a cerebral hemisphere and the diencephalon. Okay, so the diencephalon is a structure which is located in the middle of the cerebral hemisphere, and it's usually composed of all the thalamus or the thalami. So, basta makadungog mo thalamus, diencephalon na na-answer dito. So, thalamus, subthalamus, hypothalamus, methylamus. Basta na yung thalamus, diencephalon na siya. Okay? Okay, so going back. So here you have the thalamus, okay, and then you have the corpus callosum. So how do we make sure you're not lying? Oh, sige. I'm not lying here. Wait. I will show you evidence. Evidence-based medicine. Okay, so this is how it looks like. This one here is the corpus callosum, right? This is the posterior, this is the anterior portion, this is the corpus callosum, and this is the corpus callosum on this structure. You get it? But it's just up. So, kanina siya. Okay. Now, underneath the corpus callosum is the thalamus. So, this one here is the thalamus. Okay? This big structure here, the circular structure, is the thalamus. Okay? Now, you see here, there's like a thin membrane. This one. This thin membrane is known as the cavum septum pellucidum, or also known as septum pellucidum. Septum lucidum. So, I'll accept both terms during the practical exam. So, either cavum septum pellucidum or septum pellucidum, they're the same. So, this is a thin membrane that is covering your, what ventricle? Your third ventricle, correct? Okay? Now, in this specimen, you also see the third ventricle here. This is the thalamus and the corpus callosum, right? So, this structure over here is the third ventricle on each side. But the one in the middle, this, let me see it. This, okay. So, you see here this one, the space here is the third ventricle. And the one in the middle that bisects the third ventricle from left to right is the cavum septum pellucidum, or the septum lucidum. Okay? So it's the same. You get it so far? Now, the thalamus is here, so let's go down further. Unfortunately, in this area, the hypothalamus is located inside these structures because these are very superficial structures, right? So, you can see both of the optic nerve, okay? And then you have the optic chiasm, okay? And then you have the optic tract. Are you familiar with this? You're familiar with that, right? Okay. So, optic nerve, optic chiasm, optic tract, okay? And then, just beneath it is once again the midbrain that we mentioned a while ago. So, the midbrain then has this is known as the cerebral peduncle. Cerebral peduncle. Okay? And if you can see the volcano-like structure in the middle, this one here, now it protrudes outside, that is known as the infundibulum, or the pituitary stalk. So this one here corresponds to the mouth of the chicken. Or the pig, or whatever it is. Okay, mouth of the chicken. You then grow a tumor, which is the pituitary. Okay, so this one here corresponds to that volcano structure. Okay, with me so far. If you want to get your own rubber model, you can ask Sir Michael for more. Okay, I'm not limiting you to just 3 per group. Okay, so just beneath the infundibulum or the pituitary stalk, there are 2 small circular structures underneath it. I hope you can see them. Here, no, you can see the 2 structures. There you go. Okay, so you have the infundibulum, and just below that, this and this are known as the mammillary bodies. So the mammillary bodies are extension of the hypothalamus, right? Okay, those are extensions. So if we go back to the image that we created, this part here, okay, is the mammillary body, which is an extension of the hypothalamus. Okay? With me so far? Yes. Okay. So, then you have two nerves. Okay. You have two nerves. You have the oculomotor nerve. So you have the oculomotor nerve here, and then you have the trochlear nerve at the sides. Okay? And that's it for this function. Once again, what is this called? What is this called? The corpus callosum. This one is the thalamus. This one is the optic nerve. This one is the optic chiasm. This one is the optic tract. Okay? Okay. This one is the the volcano-like structure, infundibulum, and then the two ones at the there. This one are the mammillary bodies. This one is the cerebral peduncle. This one is the oculomotor, because two eyes. And then this one here is the trochlear nerve. Okay, now, so that you won't forget further, if you see this view, it looks like a small reproductive organ again. So then siya is like teeth. Okay, so there's a penis, and then you have two balls. So that's this, right? And then you have the hair, which is called hair. Okay, so there. That's how it looks like. These are the legs, the side. Okay? Hindi kaya itong brain, hindi na so weird. Anyways, so there. Okay? But during the practical exam, please do not write, if I point here, do not write this. Please write infundibulum or pituitary stalk. Okay? And then for the both mammillary bodies, please do not write as this. Okay? Automatic wrong. Okay? Sige. So that's it for this structure. No, wait, sorry, forgot this one. This one is known as the corona radiata. Okay, which is already part of the lymphatic system, which you will see later on when you reach level 3, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have the lymphatic system now? Not yet, no? Okay. That will be level 3. Okay. So, okay na ta. So this part here, no, balitaan yung structure. Once again, this is the anterior, this is the posterior portion, this is the corpus callosum. Then you have the septum lucidum, or the tabum septum lucidum. Okay? Then underneath that is the third ventricle. This one here is the thalamus. Okay? And this one here, this flat structure over here is the hypothalamus. Okay? And if I zoom it a little further, you will see a line in between the thalamus and the hypothalamus. This one here, you see this? Okay, sorry. This one. This is the thalamus, right? This is the thalamus. And you see this line that is known as the hypothalamic sulcus. Okay? And this is the hypothalamus, and extended to that is already the pituitary gland. I'm sorry, the structure of the pituitary gland is not attached anymore. Okay? And even the infundibulum is not attached. So when it's stacked here, that's the hypothalamus. When it's stacked here, that's the thalamus. Okay? Now, you can see here an extension of the optic nerve, which is this, and the optic tract. But no more, never mind the optic. Optic nerve and the optic chiasm. But never mind the optic tract. Okay? Okay na? Any questions or clarification so far? Okay. Now, I mentioned in the video about the interthalamic adhesions, the other parts of the hypothalamus, the subthalamus, the metathalamus, and the epithalamus. Unfortunately, we're not able to tag in the specimens that we have. I tried to look for them, but I don't see any other specimens that are good. So, just a bonus, just all the structures that we mentioned now will be part of the practical exam. Okay? So, unfortunately, or I really do apologize for that. Hindi na natin matingnan ninyo. But, unfortunately, wala yun siya. Okay? Sige. So, that lang so far. Any questions, clarifications, or concerns before we go? No? Ay, sorry. Ako kami dire ang last. Okay. So, this part here is the whole brain, and you see here the two optic nerves in the optic chiasm in the brain. Then you see the pons, right? Now, when you zoom it in more, no, in the middle, down here, sorry, here in the black portion, kind of depths of the earth, okay, you will see this. Okay, so this portion here is the optic nerve. Then you have the optic chiasm, and just this area over here is the optic tract. But never mind that. This one here is the pons area. And do you see these two circular structures? That's your mammillary body. Okay, you can look at it there, you can flash your cameras and see. It's really there, you'll be able to see this. Okay, that's your mammillary body. And this extension here, this is actually cut. And this is a part of the infundibulum, or the pituitary stalk, which then goes to your pituitary gland. Okay, now look, why is it not included in our raw specimen? So I'd like you to know that when we dissect the skull, we make sure to cut the cranium out. Okay, and you can also see that in this specimen, part of the cerebral hemisphere has also been cut, right, because of that dissection. But if you take it out, it's very difficult to take out the brain from the skull because of the existing meninges. So what we do is we actually just really cut out the meninges away from the whole brain. And what happens is that the pituitary gland is lodged in the sella turcica. So we're not able to take it out because the pituitary gland is also holding out meninges. So what we have to do is we have to sacrifice that area and cut through the pituitary stalk. Okay, so that's the reason why it looks like this. Okay, but also if we try to preserve the pituitary gland, it will just disintegrate to sand or powder. So wala agad siya gamitin mo ninyo. Okay, so that's it so far on our end. I hope you learned something for this laboratory. And if you have any questions or clarifications, let me know.